Why do you think Bitcoin mining is so disruptive and innovative, specifically for the oil and gas industry? I think a lot of people think of Bitcoin store of value. They think of it as a medium of exchange. They think of it as a speculation tool in financial markets. But you're specifically talking about this intersection of Bitcoin mining and oil and gas being such that this like match made in heaven. Why is that?
And so really what Bitcoin mining is a lot of things, but it's the democratization of energy innovation. So if you wanted to innovate in the power sector or in the energy business, you needed to be independently wealthy with billions of dollars, or you needed to work at a massive corporation. You're going to work at that company for 10, 20 years. And, once you control the purse strings, you're probably not going to innovate near as much. So what Bitcoin mining did is you leverage several principles, which is, bottom-up solutions and skin in the game, permissionless innovation. So anybody globally now can be an energy entrepreneur. I mean, literally, you can have, there are no barriers to entry. You can rub 2 nickels, and if you can plug in an ASIC, you can innovate. So we are all thrown out. I mean, I remember 3 years ago, we were like, okay, what's some of the best, from a first principles standpoint, what's the lowest cost energy? Okay, it's waves. Okay, well, the biggest, most consistent waves are in the middle of nowhere. Sweet, let's take the Bitcoin mining there. And then really there's all these engineering tech, and this is what we were studying 5 years ago, was there's these engineering technologies that are in energy or energy technologies, but they're engineering successes, but they're not economic successes. And so what Bitcoin mining does is it gives anybody a line of sight to profitability. And so really, like, I like the App Store. Before the App Store, if you want to innovate in software, you needed to work at a big oligopoly or get backed by VC or something like that. What the App Store did was it democratized innovation in the software business. So all of a sudden you had a clear line of sight to profitability if you could innovate. And so the same thing with the Nakamoto of it basically just sent a private, a signal to the market and said, if you lower the cost of power, then we will give you more capital. And so really Bitcoin mining is the most beautifully savage venture capital company. And it's focused on one thing and one thing only. If you lower the price of power, you get more Bitcoin. You get more resources in your success. And so we're going to see this iterative process play out for the next century, usher in a Kardashev type 1 society, but really you've democratized it.
Bitcoin is a venture capital fund, is not something most people have thought about. Explain that further.
Yeah, so this idea was popularized by a guy named Jesse Pelton, who worked on Hollow Ranch with me on and really was one of the pioneers of demand response in Texas. So yeah, basically, venture capital looks at what are disruptive things, and then how do we give capital and make asymmetric bets. And, there is, everyone wants to think, oh, it's an efficient market. It's not. You got to know people. You got to have the networks. So there's all these people that have been disenfranchised because they didn't go to the, high pedigree schools. And so what Bitcoin mining does is it strips out all emotions, all relationships. The only thing that matters is if you lower the price of power, then you get to, you spend less on your operating expenses go down, which means your profit margin goes up, which you get more capital from the Bitcoin network through the, the algorithm that releases blocks every 10 minutes. So you get more resources. And so if, you have A over here that can get power to 5 cents and B over here, which innovates and gets power down to 2 cents, well, B is going to get more profit and has, more resources, and then we'll redeploy that. And so I think, this is very early, but you're seeing it, all of us. And now we've got this great, I can literally get on my phone, and I unfortunately do this too much. Oh, well, that's a great idea. Who are the experts? Like, we were looking at wave stuff 3 years ago. Oh, they're all like in Europe, in London. Okay, great. And I literally got on with 3 of the world's experts on wave turbines, just like that. And so I think not only do you have liquidity in the capital markets with Bitcoin now, you don't need to have cool relationships, communications. And so I can hop on and find experts on any idea and then, throw shit against the wall and see what sticks.
You mentioned that Bitcoin will have an impact on civilization as well. Describe what you mean there.
Whew, how much time do you have? I think it, I talk about Bitcoin in 2 frameworks. One, it's an energy revolution. And 2, it's a human freedom revolution. And so if you we have the greatest financial markets in America, full stop. And because of that there's a high amount of trust. So the higher trust can be, the more value that's created. There's a company called Trust Ventures. That's like literally their concept. Thank you, Brian and Sal. But really, if you can elevate trust, so But globally, that doesn't exist, you know? And so like, you know, Nigeria, Venezuela, you hear about these places, they don't have trust in their financial systems and they can't save. So and now with the Lightning Network and other innovations on Bitcoin, you know, if you wanted to, savings is very critical to elevating your family out of abject poverty. But if you're living in an inflationary environment, that's impossible to do because you're always saving is easy, investing is hard. And so really what you just did is you democratize savings with Bitcoin. So anybody can stack sats, anybody. All you need is a cell phone. And cell phones are super cheap thanks to innovation. And so really you've got all these disenfranchised developing nations with individuals globally who now have an opportunity to save and knowing that the value they're saving cannot be printed away. And so I think this is going to play out over the coming centuries where, you know, America is the land of the free. And it was created by dissidents who left the old world. And I think there is massive amounts of dissidents globally. And now you've given them the greatest human savings technology, you know, anti-fragile technology. I mean, nobody can shut it down. So I think this is going to play out and equip families and individuals and I think that's the beauty of and need for education in the market of like Bitcoin, unless you're like a Ron Paul audit the Fed person here in America, Bitcoin is difficult to grasp. But like, and that was one of the greatest things. A few of us were invited to the Human Rights Freedom Forum in Oslo a few years ago. And I'd hosted dinners with my American friends. I'd hosted all these events trying to bring education. And Alex Gladstein orange-pilled a lot of people at some of the events I'd host. But it was always like, yeah, but I don't need, it was always a brick wall. But when I went to the Oslo Freedom Forum and I was like, oh, hey, here's what Bitcoin does. They're like, okay, great. How do I get that? Like they wanted it, they need it. So innovation happens on the fringe. So I think that's where, you know, the Lightning Network and everything that's happening, the innovation isn't going to happen in America exclusively. It's going to happen where the people need it most.
And when you think about 20, 30, 50 years from now, what does that look like in the world? Is it running on a Bitcoin standard and it's like hyper Bitcoinization? Is it Bitcoin is a savings technology and people still have other assets that they're investing in? Like, how do you think about it full well knowing predicting 50 years out is nearly impossible?
Yeah, and so I have an opinion on the energy side, but on the just broad, Bitcoin is not just a money, you know. And I'll use the analogy when people came to America. Why did America become so powerful? Why was so much wealth created here? And I think you tie it back to property rights. So when people came to America, they could own land. And the founding fathers could never have conceptualized, you know, apps and social media. So how did we get, well, really we had land. And on top of land, which is like the base layer of Bitcoin, people built farming. People built shops, built real estate, but then they built an LLC, a corporation. Like those are layer 1, 2, 3 on, you know, of land. And so none of that was possible. And then the internet comes along and supercharged it. So when I think about the future of Bitcoin, to me, it's an elevation of the principles that made America great. And so it is taking, you know, the United States Constitution and enshrining it into code to where it set a vision and it, you know, it gives more clarity and confidence to if you create value in the Bitcoin ecosystem, it'll be mutually beneficial. So I think there's a lot of fascinating, Bitcoin's going to intertwine with all our lives in ways that we can't really conceptualize, but you know, we'll be able to run things in a decentralized manner, you know, on layer 2. And I'm even hearing about layer 3, that's just way over my skis.